What kind of investor would have Karl Popper been? And what kind of investor would have Wittgenstein been? I think this is a bit more of a serious question than maybe it might appear just on first hearing, because these two people were very important philosophers and they had two opposing views of philosophy. One, Popper, thinks of philosophy as application to problems, and the other thinks of philosophy as a word of games, as an application of words to no end. So basically calls it word games, useless, not very interesting, all that stuff. So why am I asking this question within the context of investing? Because I think we're in the knowledge business here. Knowledge has to do with philosophy. Knowledge has to do with the question of how is it we're actually even thinking about our endeavor. And if you really apply Popper now even to the discipline of investing, what you're really asking here is, how are we thinking about the thinking of investing? So this is meta investing, if you want. I don't care what you want to call it. I think it's important because we at Orange Capital Partners are incredibly influenced by Karl Popper in many ways, partly because part of our principal stack is David Deutsch's The Beginning of Infinity, and with that, we're already in Popperian territory. But I think more importantly, it is the question, and I think Popper asks that question in his biography: how does it feel to solve problems? How does it feel to solve problems? And the purpose of this podcast is to give people a sense of what it feels like to run a hedge fund. So the word feeling comes up in several instances here, and I think that's what I want to focus on in this episode. It's the feeling. What does that feel like to invest in fundamentally new concepts and engineering practices versus, and this is now paraphrasing Popper, just applying methods to something, which is what he is criticizing philosophy for, and generally science. In many instances, he agrees with Wittgenstein that it's just a game. It's just applying methods. That's what Popper says, and that doesn't really get you very far. This is Not Even Wrong podcast. It's March 9, 2022. This is Krim Delco. Since the last update, we're up roughly 5%. The market is up 1%. For the year, we're down 25%. The market is down 10.5%. We are underperforming by 14.5%. The market's still open. Therefore, these numbers could change. So let's just jump right into it. So the question is, again, what kind of investor would Popper be versus Wittgenstein? And I think I want to put this analogy a little bit more concrete in the context of let's compare us with the mainstream of Wall Street. And I think we at Orange Capital Partners, our mission statement is to generate wealth by investing in fundamentally new concepts and engineering practices with large impact. And that is very close to the Popperian idea of philosophy and science, because we want to be in the business of having this nagging like a scientist. When you want to solve a problem, let's take Feynman's example of the mirror. Why does a mirror reflect something horizontally reversed versus vertically reversed? Why is that? That's a legitimate question. And some people might say, I don't care. That's not my problem. And other people might think about it, and some people might even solve it theoretically. Then there's the question David Deutsch often says, which is, how can we know things without seeing them? How can we come up with theories and conjecture? What is a good conjecture? All these kinds of things. I think I want to now extend those things to investing. There is a difference between investing in fundamentally new concepts and engineering practices, which is what we do, and applying methods, which is what a lot of people on Wall Street do. And let's say typically, let's just use an example. I don't want to pick on him, but it's a good example. I call him very often when I compare Wall Street or when I talk to Wall Street people, I use him as an example. It's Adam Jonas, the so-called car analyst at Morgan Stanley, or whatever analyst is. It doesn't matter. That's already, you see, when you have a job description like that, what can you really do anyway in this day and age when the car industry is being disrupted? But anyway, Adam Jonas is that kind of person, in my view, that is continuously applying methodology, desperately trying to justify applying methodology and being right, which are very two different, incredibly different things. You know, being right and applying methodology, they just have nothing to do with each other. And that's why a lot of Wall Street people are being ridiculed these days, including him, because they come out with these sophisticated sounding word games, and this would be Wittgenstein's critique of philosophy and my critique on investing, which is an application of Wittgenstein's critique to the investment process. They come up with these word games, these sophisticated sounding blobs about given the market share, and we assume this, and the price earnings ratio, and all these methods that were evolved, some of them interesting, some of them useful maybe at some point in the process of human development, but certainly not useful when we're investing in Tesla, for example. But it just doesn't work. And I've spoken about this in the past. We need new methodologies to understand new developments. Tesla is a new development. A company like that has never existed before, so we can't use old methodologies to analyze something that has never existed before. And the same applied to Microsoft or Amazon or Apple, or even if you go further back, Xerox or Coca-Cola, or whatever the methodologies were 50 years ago when Coca-Cola was the big deal, or Xerox. They didn't work relative to what these companies were doing, so new methodologies had to be worked out. For example, fundamental investing or value investing was one of the things which came out in those days and made sense. So things like, for example, return on equity and those sort of things made a lot of sense to analyze, versus maybe if you analyzed investments during the Rockefeller times, so let's say 100 years ago, you would have just thought about, okay, who has more power, who can crush competition, and who can bribe politicians to avoid antitrust lawsuits, or maybe that was the main investment process. And today, certainly all these things don't matter. What matters today is building a monopoly through fundamentally new concepts and engineering practices. This is the analysis, but that is not the point. I'm not talking about methodology here. Actually, the point of this podcast is to not talk about methodology, to talk about the feeling, to talk about the feel of how it feels to invest in fundamentally new concepts and engineering practices. Why is that different? Because there's this nagging, there is this excitement, this uncertainty, but also this North Star. I often talk about the importance of the mission statement when it comes to our companies. The mission statement being, it's of course a bunch of words, and who cares? It's not about the words. What it's really about, it's about where is this going? So once we apply all this engineering stuff, what is the goal? For example, digitizing healthcare through applying genome editing, or being able to read and write the genome more efficiently, opens up so many avenues. We know for sure the history of technology has taught us that we don't know what the future applications of a certain platform technology will be. We don't know that, but it's exciting. And how does that compare to, let's say, investing in a company X that is just using methodology such as when they present, let's say, again, I don't want to pick on companies, but my example here would be General Mills. You talk to a company like General Mills or Danone in Europe. They're in the consumer goods business, and they would just talk to you about, again, market share and pricing. How they can raise prices. They will throw in a few things like innovation, but what's the innovation in yogurt really? There's been one innovation in the last 20 years, which is Greek yogurt or protein. Somehow people got this hooked on eating more protein, so that was the big innovation. So really, there's no innovation there. And these people, these companies, the CEO and CFO and all these people, all they do is just throw methodologies at you, throw word games at you, and then the investors that invest in these companies, they throw word games at you too. So what I'm trying to say here is not just philosophical. I think there is actually a point to be made. that if you go to a presentation of a company, for example, right now there's a technology conference here in downtown San Francisco, the Morgan Stanley conference, and we used to go to these conferences and we used to learn a lot. And I'm not necessarily against them. I mean, having seen it is important. So I'm actually grateful that I was able to go to these conferences. The point being, though, is that 99% of these conferences is all about word games. It's about blobs of methods applied to using old methods, existing methods to the investment process. There's no value added in any which way beyond, again, using methods. So this is the equivalent of Wittgenstein's philosophy or his criticism on philosophy. Or in other words, when Wittgenstein says there is no philosophy because everything is just a word game, I think when I go to a conference like that, I have to say there's no investment here. This is just a word game. Again, blobs, just words. There's no investing in the sense of this excitement, this feeling of doing something new that we feel when we come across an investment like Tesla or CRISPR or even Bitcoin and blockchain. Like, you can feel the difference. And it's important because feeling is just another word for not being able to explain rationally what is going on. And that's fine. We're not in the business. I often say that we're not in the business of rationalizing or explaining or coming up with theories. We're in the business of generating wealth. So when something feels like it's a wealth generator, when something feels like it's going to do a lot of things that we might not be certain about what they will be today, but we know through the process of fundamentally new concepts and engineering practices that something new will come out. Like the 4680 battery that Tesla hopefully soon will be able to produce at scale will have enormous repercussions on the car industry, on the energy industry. It is our belief that Tesla will be able to solve some of the energy independence problem, or like we call, instead of decarbonizing the energy infrastructure, we also want to de-Russianize or make sure that Russia can be kept off the global markets for indefinite, a la, North Korea or Venezuela. That is the part of where Tesla really has some value added. But we need some fundamentally new concepts and engineering practices. What we don't need is applying old methods here. The application of. So let's take this. This is a great example. Actually, why don't we just talk about this example? So we have this problem that Russia is a rogue state. We have a further problem, which is that, in fact, what's going on right now in the energy markets is not that Russia is being kept off the market. It is that the energy markets are being repriced properly because you can't include Russia in the market. Russia is not a player in the global economy. They don't play in any other market. The only market where they play is energy, and we in the West have been somehow naive to think that they are a player. They're not a player because they're holding us hostage, and being held hostage is not an option. That is not an option. I think that's just human. It's just human. I mean, you don't want to be held hostage. So you need to have a market. You need to have a solution for a market without Russia. And the solution for that market is fundamental new concepts and engineering practices. Now, you can go also and apply methods. This would be the Wittgensteinian solution, which is you apply a method. You say, okay, we have energy X, which is, let's say, oil from Russia. Now we just use the same method, drill for oil just somewhere else. And that is one solution. It's certainly possible, but it's not going to get us anywhere. It's going to create wars somewhere else. It's going to create corruption somewhere else. It's like the Einstein thing. If you do the same thing over and over again, don't expect different outcomes. If we have a situation such as Russia, a rogue state that has no democratic roots, no democratic fabric, and we think that we can go and drill for oil somewhere else in Venezuela or in Brazil or in whatever, Mongolia, and then think that they will not turn into a rogue state, that is stupid. So we need to come up with a new solution to this energy problem, and that is what fundamentally new concepts and engineering practices in essence are. Their application to a problem an application to a problem, a scientific application, an engineering application to a problem. This is what is so exciting about us being involved in this space. This is why we love being involved in this space. This is how it feels like to generate wealth. This is the key. This is exactly how it feels like to generate wealth. I met a company the other day, actually, an acquaintance, and they work, I don't want to mention names here, they work for a company which does project management, software project management, something like that. And when they start explaining to me what they do, I can't help but falling asleep. It's boring. And that could be in the eye of the beholder. Maybe it's my lack of understanding, my lack of being involved in software, in large software projects, maybe that it makes me being bored. But I really believe it's not me. It is the problem that this particular company is not solving anything interesting. So what we're doing now, if we come across a company like that, is we start applying methods. And this is what's happening right now at the Morgan Stanley technology companies. Methods are being applied. All right, what's the sales multiple, all that stuff. What's your market share, your growth? I don't know, blah, 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 blah. And that's fine. You can make money over time. Over a really long arch of time, your returns at best will be something like index plus a few hundred basis points, which is not bad, of course. Does it justify a whole army of analysts, all the expenses, all the fluff which is around the Wall Street industry? I doubt. I don't think it justifies that. So in other words, I think we're wasting a lot of capital and money and all that stuff by doing it that way. But that's fine. And I am not here to change the way Wall Street works. I'm not here to change the global finance system. There's a lot more to it than just a conversation between Popper and Wittgenstein or something like that. There's corruption. There's also government influence. There's a lot of things here that unfortunately are part of this equation. But what I want to say is that we at Orange Capital Partners have, through the study of Popper and Deutsch, found a way to at least think about it in a different way and also try to not explain, but have a better understanding of the way we feel about investing. And the way we feel about investing is the way one feels, or it's at least close to the way one feels when they solve scientific problems. It's a certain excitement, a certain nagging. It's not applying methods. In fact, we don't apply no methods. And this was part of the big education that we had to go through, coming from Wall Street, coming from, I went to the University of Chicago where I learned a lot of good methods. The University of Chicago is the mother of all methods when it comes to finance and all that stuff. However, when it comes to creating wealth, a lot of these methods are useless. And that's, to be fair, also the first thing when I asked my finance professor at Chicago, where am I going to learn how to make money? They laughed and they said, that's part of the literature department. That's not the finance department. So that was a joke, but it was a little bit more than a joke. It was actually a real comment, which just meant that here you're going to learn methods that are used in certain applications, such as, for example, again, what method? What are we talking about here? We're talking about methods, let's say, to manage money, pension money, things like that. It doesn't matter. The point is that creating wealth has a whole different. Creating wealth is a different discipline, and it's a lot more like science. And the reason I am so confident about that is because it has that same feeling, that nagging, that like you can't let loose. You can't think. You're excited about how is Tesla going to solve this problem? How is Tesla going to solve this energy problem? Are they going to solve it? Am I wrong? There's some excitement there, something that I don't feel like when I look at this company, which is doing that project management, software project management, or like, again, General Mills. I don't want to pick on companies here. I'm just using them as an example. Or Coca-Cola, which, how exciting is it to repackage sugar water for the gazillionth time and reprice it and raise prices and find justifications for why you can keep raising prices or things like that. That's just not a very exciting thing. So to summarize, again, what kind of investor would Karl Popper have been? Karl Popper would have been the kind of investor that we actually are, which is an investor that is going after problems and feels excitement about solving those problems And Wittgenstein would have been an investor much more like traditional Wall Street, where it's a word game and it's an application of words and methods to nothing, really. I mean, sometimes maybe by coincidence they might solve certain problems, but overall there's no problem being solved. It's just simply application of methods, and that is why also the returns of traditional investment approaches are much lower than the expected returns of the Popperian method, which is when you solve real problems. Thank you.